Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to slow things right down today and unpack a deeply moving piece of source material. It's all about divine love, the profound power of prayer, and that universal journey back to spiritual comfort. We are going to look strictly at what this text tells us, really exploring its beautiful poetic logic. So let's dive right in.
Okay, so the text starts with this absolutely fascinating paradox. It states that the divine patiently waits to hear your prayers, your du'as, even though the innermost contents of your heart are already completely known. I mean, think about that for a second. It isn't about transferring information, right? It isn't about telling the divine something brand new. The text is highlighting a relationship that's based purely on presence. The invitation to speak is there entirely for the connection it creates, despite absolute omniscience.
And this brings us right to our first section, understanding Al-Wadud.
The source uses the Arabic term Al-Wadud, which literally translates to the most loving, and this is absolutely crucial for our understanding of the entire text. Notice, it doesn't just say loving, it specifically says the most loving. This exact attribute frames every single promise and action that we'll see in the source material. It tells us right off the bat that the core driver of the relationship described here is an immense, unconditional love.
Moving right along to the next section, how the divine responds. Now, the text explicitly outlines three very distinct active guarantees. These are the specific ways the divine reacts to our pain, our effort, and our requests. It's an incredibly structured breakdown of divine empathy and action. Let's actually take a closer look at each of these 3 points one by one to really grasp what the text is conveying.
First up, we start with profound empathy. The text states that the divine comforts you when your heart is torn. Notice the visceral language used here. It doesn't just say when you're sad or having a bad day, it uses the word torn. It fully acknowledges the painful, sometimes agonizing reality of the human condition, and the immediate divine response to that exact level of pain, the promise of comfort. It establishes the divine as a very real source of solace during our most fragile moments. Then, we get this beautiful kind of disproportionate response. On one hand, you have your action. You walk to him, which, is a moderate, steady effort. But in contrast, the divine response is that he runs to you. The text is illustrating that your small, perhaps hesitant effort to approach the divine is met with an eager, overwhelmingly massive response. It's a dynamic of immense encouragement. The third and final promise in this sequence definitely requires a bit of patience on our end. The text assures us that the divine answers your dua, but always at the perfect time. It doesn't say prayers are answered immediately on our preferred schedule. Actually, by specifically including the phrase always at the perfect time, the source material entirely reframes how we view unanswered prayers. It shifts the perspective away from a feeling of being ignored and moves it toward a trusting reliance on divine timing.
Which leads us perfectly into our next section, the rope of hope.
I want us to just sit with this deeply poetic metaphor from the text for a moment. Dua is the rope of hope. According to the source material, dua, supplication, or prayer, isn't just some simple transactional request. Think about it. A rope is something tangible you grasp when you're falling, right? It's a lifeline that pulls you to safety. It literally tethers two things together. The text is telling us that our prayers act as this vital, life-saving tether to the most loving. It is the literal instrument of our hope.
But what happens when we feel completely disconnected? Well, that's what we explore in this next section, overcoming the distance.
The text directly hits on our guilt and that inherent human tendency to just wander off. It explicitly states that neither physical distance nor the passage of time are actual barriers to this love. Consider the absolute nature of the phrasing the text uses, no matter how far and no matter how long. The source material intentionally rips away the two biggest mental hurdles we create for ourselves, the belief that we've done too much wrong or that way too much time has passed to ever go back.
So I want you to reflect on this directly for a second, just exactly as the text prompts us to do. How much time or emotional distance is built up in your own spiritual life? How long has it been since you prayed? The real genius of the source material here is that it forces us to acknowledge this distance. Not to shame us, absolutely not, but to set up the ultimate empowering resolution that comes next.
And the beauty of this text is how immediate that solution is, leading us to our final section, finding your way home.
The ultimate return is broken down into an incredibly simple sequence. The text doesn't prescribe some massive, complicated series of rituals to earn back divine favor. Instead, it offers a direct formula. Step 1, Step 2, leading immediately to Step 3. Let's look a little closer at those two active steps.
The text, it literally takes just one sajda, one sincere dua. A sajda is a physical act of prostration. It's the ultimate physical manifestation of humility and surrender. Paired with this is one sincere dua, meaning one truly honest, heartfelt prayer from your lips. The source material guarantees that this single combination of physical humility and verbal honesty is entirely sufficient to completely bridge a gap you might have previously thought was absolutely insurmountable. It brings you home.
As we wrap up our explainer of this profoundly comforting text, we really have to look at the practical application. We've learned from the source that Al-Wadud, the most loving, already knows your heart and is actively waiting to run towards you at the very slightest effort on your part. It doesn't matter how far you've strayed, and it doesn't matter how long it's been. So, the question the text naturally leaves us with is this. Knowing that the connection is just one sincere prayer away, what is stopping you from reaching out and grasping that rope of hope today?